Part of the world, Match of the Day Africa Top 10 is the podcast from the BBC World Service ranking the best African players.
This guy is recognised as the best in the world.
Teams.
The ball coming, turn, boom.
And the biggest moments in African football.
The whole world remembers that.
Remember that, yeah.
It's not just African fans.
Match of the Day Africa Top 10. Find it wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Thanks for downloading this podcast from the BBC. I'm Mike Thompson, and for this episode of Assignment, I'm in Tunisia to find out what happened to the revolution that sparked the Arab Spring. I'm Mike Thompson, and this is the documentary from the BBC World Service. It was a quiet, normal evening in February this year, at the end of a long working day, when civil servant Hadija Issa got into her sister Shaima's car in the Tunisian capital Tunis before driving back home together.
I was with Shaima when she got arrested. It was 5 o'clock in the evening, and she was giving me a lift in her car back from my work. And there were a lot of policemen around. She said they had just arrested someone else, and now they were coming for her.
Shaima Issa is a prominent political and social activist. Talking to her sister Hadija Issa in Shaima's apartment in a hilly Tunis suburb, I can see on the mantelpiece personal photographs of Shaima along with awards she's won for her women's rights campaigns. But Shaima wasn't with us. She was in jail, accused of conspiring against the government. Once Tunisia, the North African country of just 12 million people, squeezed between its much bigger neighbours Libya and Algeria, was a beacon of democracy. It was the first Arab country to overthrow its dictator, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, in 2011, during what became known as the Arab Spring. Now, a new authoritarian leader, Kais Saied, dominates the country, and he's clamping down on prominent people he considers a threat to his leadership.
She said, "What's wrong?" The policeman said, "Can you give me the paperwork of the car and the ID?" And Shaima said, "Why all this aggression? Everybody's watching me. It is not acceptable." She said then, "I'm Shaima Issa, and I know Kais Saied wants to put me in jail."
In this episode of Assignment, I'm going to find out what's gone wrong with Tunisia's democratic experiment. Will support for President Kais Saied survive the country's nosediving economy? Why do so many people, including young Tunisians, want to leave, sometimes risking their lives trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe? And why was a female activist with a young son languishing in prison?
Then she stepped out of the car. There was the anti-terrorism car and other policemen, lots of policemen, and the huge car where they put her later. And then they searched me. At that time, I lost control of myself.
When you said you lost control of yourself at the scene there, what did you mean?
It was as if you are walking along in the street in safety and somebody came and mugged you. I was totally shaking. I was trying to call my father, but the policeman was saying, "No phone, no phone."
When Hadija tried to drive Shaima's car home, she says she was shaking so much she couldn't steer the car, so a police officer had to drive them back to Shaima's house.
Even when she went to the toilet, the police woman was with her. They didn't let us move. They searched the business cards Shaima has, and every time they asked her, "Who is this one and how do you know him?" Anyway, they accused her, but they found nothing. No proof of the things they were accusing her of. She hugged me and she said, "Say hi to her son, Jazé." She said, "Don't worry, everything will be okay. Take care of yourself and our father."
How much has her imprisonment affected your family?
It's affected us a lot. Me and Shaima, we were always together. But since the moment she was arrested, my life has stopped. I stay in the house, I prepare food, I go to the prison. I'm taking medicine because I'm so traumatized by what happened. We are not laughing like before. Shayma was like the kind of linchpin in the family. This is something which is making us suffer.
The jailing of political and other opponents is a far cry from the hopes raised by the 2011 revolution that overthrew the dictator Ben Ali. Democracy had endured for 10 years, but the governing parties did little to improve conditions for the average Tunisian. Elected in 2019, President Said, a balding law professor who's ironically an expert on the constitution, began dismantling the linchpins of democracy. In 2021, he sacked the Prime Minister and dissolved Parliament, claiming he was rescuing the country from anarchy and political deadlock. He then gave himself the power to rule by decree, before taking control of the judiciary and rewriting the constitution. Critics accuse him of mounting a coup and turning the clock back to the dictatorial days of former President Ben Ali. I've come to meet a Tunisian rapper who was arrested under Ben Ali's rule in 2011 for his song Mr. President, which became an anthem for change. His name is El General. Well, I've arrived at what looks like it could well be a suitable home for El General. It's a bit of a Spanish villa-looking place, quite grand, very tall, and a big wooden door here. I'm heading in the right direction. A thick padded door here, the studio door. El General, I'm Thompson, ABC. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Right, the right place.
فنان تونسي رابور على باز دخلت للدومين نتاع الراب مليان عمري 17.
I started singing rap when I was 17 years old in 2007. People didn't know me at the time. And then when I wrote the song The President, people knew me, and the people knew that we had a common enemy. And they believed in the words. And even when Ben Ali arrested me, people were supporting me.
So can I pick things up there in 2011 and your song that really captured the spirit at the time of the nation?
رئيس البلاد هاني اليوم نحكي معاك باسمي واسم الشعب الكل اللي عايش بالاحلام 2011 ما زال فما شكون يموت بالجوع حب يخدم باش. Tell me about how it caught on at that point and the part it played in the uprising.
تيتر رئيس البلاد بون جا.
That song, The President of the Republic, you know, it was spontaneous. The words themselves were shocking to me because at the time I was writing them, I couldn't believe what I was writing. Because lots of people who spoke at that time were in jail or were kicked out of the country.
So you must have been very worried that you could be joining other people in jail when that song started to catch on.
بالطبيعة معناها في هذاك الوقت كيف هبطت تيتر أول حاجة خفت على عائلتي.
Of course, at that time, if you are in trouble, they took the whole family for investigation. And my mom wanted even to take me out of Tunisia because she was afraid for me. When I got arrested, I thought that this is it. This is the end. You know, because in that time, if you went to the Ministry of Interior, you wouldn't be able to get out again.
What do you think it was about your song that caught on so strongly, that had such a big impact on the population at that very time?
شوف هي معناها الشوك.
I think there was the shock of the name itself. The name was the president of the country, and it was like a direct speech. As if you know, the song was speaking to the president face to face. It was directly about him and about his family and close circle.
دوك الأغنية خلت الناس تفيق.
People started to believe in change against the oppression. It gave people hope that they could make a revolution and change things for the better.
Those heady days of the revolution feel a long way away now for Tunisia. We'll return to El General to find out what he thinks of the current regime at the end of this programme. He was 21 when he wrote his celebrated anthem. So, more than a decade on, what do people around that age think about what's happening in Tunisia now? To find out, I've come to one of Tunis's poorest neighbourhoods. Etadaman has a cross-section of people, but many are struggling on low incomes and facing some of the social problems that often come with that. For some, the solution is to escape abroad, by whatever means they can.
I practice kickboxing here in my local gym. I was born in this neighborhood of Tadamon in Tunis. There are all kinds of people living here. Doctors, sports people, also bad people like drug dealers, people who sell weed. But my mother and father brought me up well. Yeah, it's true that there is a lot of poverty, too much unemployment here. But you know, you need always to look for opportunities. Come with me, I'll show you the gym.
The gym has a circuit of bright yellow punch bags that scream out from the dark walls and floor. In the centre is a circular boxing ring, enclosed by black nylon netting, held up by yellow padded posts. This is where the sparring takes place. The kickboxer, who we're not naming to protect his identity, is wearing grey tracksuit bottoms and a dark top, already sweating heavily from the heat and the strenuous warm-ups he's been doing. Clearly intelligent, he boasts a diploma in security system surveillance. A broad smile sweeps across his face as he talks about his love of kickboxing.
You're obviously a bright guy. You're good at kickboxing, that's clear. But what about other people who have less education than you? How hard is it for them?
Some will fall into bad habits. They will smoke weed and drink. They stay in the cafe or in their houses. They should do something, look for a job.
What ambition do you have in the sport?
My ambition is to reach the international level, to go to the international championships and the Olympics. But in Tunisia, it's hard to do that, to get the funding. We are living day by day here and we cannot really afford these things. My family doesn't have the money. That's why people consider migrating illegally. Many people have left and now they no longer represent Tunisia. They represent the new country they have migrated to.
If you got the chance to do your sport in Europe, go to a competition there, do you think you'd come back?
If I got the chance to go abroad and box, once I'm there, the first thing I would think about is a way to stay there. I can't lie to you. If I really go there and find an opportunity to stay there, I don't think I would come back.
The gym's owner says the kickboxing authorities are taking steps to ensure people don't abscond.
Our kickboxing federation is making a new system to prevent them doing that, to make sure that they come back home to Tunisia after a competition. First of all, they take their passports, then the whole team will be escorted all the time until they return. But they'll never stop the possibility that somebody else will find the solution and he will go.
And would that make you sad if that happened, if more people did find a way not to come back?
Absolutely not. If someone gets to a place where he can achieve his ambition and dreams, why not? I mean, he can do it.
I've come to a market in central Tunis to find out how the country's deep economic woes are affecting people's daily lives. I've been told that many foods are either impossible to afford or hard to find anymore. Next to me is a meat stall where a young woman is about to buy some chicken, and I'm going to find out whether all I've been hearing about the ever-soaring cost of living here is true.
How much have prices gone up here in the market?
They have increased by 2, 3, 4 times. You know, our incomes aren't keeping up with what we are spending.
How are you managing to put food on the table for your family?
Overnight prices change and we are confused about how to spend our money. Sometimes staples are missing which are really necessary. Things like semolina, flour, milk, bread. And you know, these things are essential for every Tunisian.
What do you think is going to happen if this carries on?
It's like a catastrophe will happen if things carry on like this, really. This market has the lowest prices. They should be affordable. The government has to deal with this situation because it shouldn't let things get out of control.
Many people are worried about saying anything critical about food prices or anything at all. Do you think that is common? And do you know why that is?
For me, I'm speaking about myself. I speak about things as they are. At least they will hear our voices and try to change things.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you a lot. Welcome.
Shukran. This woman was one of the few people in the market willing to speak to me about anything that might be viewed as critical by the authorities. Although she was happy to have her voice recorded, she didn't want to give her name or have her picture taken. Such caution is understandable in Tunisia's current political climate. Early this morning, 2 plainclothes police officers came to our guest house here in Tunis, and they asked the owner if she knew where we're planning to go today. And since then, the same car has been following everywhere we go, right behind us. And in fact, it's still there now. I've been advised that I shouldn't look around too often at it, but I've a feeling those inside the vehicle want us to know they're there. In the same month as Shema Issa, the political activist we heard about at the start of the programme, was imprisoned, the president made a truly incendiary speech. In it, he attacked migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, claiming hordes of them were coming to Tunisia as part of a criminal plot to overrun the country's Arab majority. The impact was immediate. Many black Africans, most of them migrants, were attacked on the streets and kicked out of their jobs and accommodation. I'm outside the offices of the International Organization for Migration in central Tunis, and all around me are a sea of brightly coloured plastic tents here under the baking sun, and there are something like 300 people. All of them have apparently been evicted since President Said talked about what he described as this invasion of hordes of African migrants from other parts of Africa. They've been having a very hard time. Could I ask you, please, where you are from?
I'm from Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone?
Yeah, Sierra Leone.
And what are you and other people doing here?
From the 21st of February, when the president gave a speech that he don't want to see any black people into the country, in Tunisia. At that time, we were living in the house, and I was working before that speech of the president. So my boss sacked me out of my job. They say I should not work again because of the president's speech. Also, the landlord threw us out of the house. So at that time, the life is getting difficult for us. We don't have work, we don't have anything to do inside this country.
To protect his identity, we're going to call him Mohammed. The perils for him are not just about being made homeless. There are physical threats as well, from the police, but also, he says, local people.
When you go outside, the police people will catch you, they take you to the prison. The Arab boys, they are fighting us, they go and rob us, they even injured me here.
I can see the scar on your arm.
Yes. He removed the knife, so I want to block it like this. So I was going down, so he hit me this way.
And did you and others here come with the idea of going to Europe?
As for me, I don't come here to go in Europe, because when we come here with some of our colleagues, they are dying inside this water. So me, I don't have the intention right now because I'm scared of it. Because that water is so dangerous.
What about other people here? Do they want to try and get to Europe?
I don't know about them because we don't discuss about that one. We need help. Please, we are suffering here a lot. We have some babies here. If you come in the evening, we see some little baby, newborns, 2 months, 6 months, 3 days, 1 month. Look at us, how we're going to work to take care of ourselves and our babies.
While Mohammed is reluctant to risk his life attempting to cross the Mediterranean to Europe, tens of thousands of other migrants, both sub-Saharans and Tunisians, are still determined to try. Despite the mounting death toll, more than 1,100 people have lost their lives so far this year. It seems desperation trumps danger. To stay means enduring ever-worsening poverty, attacks by locals and growing political repression. I wanted to put these issues to the Tunisian government. But despite repeated requests to speak to the president or any of his ministers, I was told no one was available. It's not easy to speak to the government's leading opponents either, as many are either in jail or too afraid to do interviews. But Nabil Haji, the General Secretary of the Democratic Stream, a liberal opposition party which had briefly been part of a coalition government, was prepared to talk about his fears for the future.
The real problem is that there are no policies to reform the social and economic issues. There are only slogans. There are no plans to make reforms. In order to cover this failure, the authorities are using different methods to silence any opposition. They are spreading terror against anyone who wants to speak or protest.
You are quite a critic of the president. Aren't you worried that you will be the next to be put in jail?
I'm defending my principles and my love toward my country. I was an MP before the president dissolved the parliament, and I swore that I would respect the constitution and the interest of the Tunisian people.
Where do you think all this is going to lead? What sort of country will Tunisia be, do you think, in 5 years' time?
We will return to something similar to a dictatorship, like in the days of Ben Ali. But at least Ben Ali was successful in social and economic issues. Ben Ali was a dictator and a repressive man, and he used to hate freedom. But he surrounded himself with specialists to make plans. But the current president is not listening to others.
So you think there could be another revolution just down the line?
I don't know whether I am allowed to call it a revolution or not, but Tunisians will not accept what is going on. History tells us that no dictatorship will last forever. And so that's why we should never give up in order to make the freedom triumph.
Even if some opposition politicians are warning of a wave of discontent, so far nothing comparable to 2011 has happened on the streets. These days, El General, the rapper we spoke to at the start of the programme, who symbolised the revolution back then, seems less of a firebrand now. A married man in his 30s, with a young family, a beautiful house and his own recording studio, he now perhaps has a lot more to lose. Do you feel a sense of responsibility, given the role you played in the 2011 uprising, that people are looking to you to once again provide the impetus to resist the current government?
Of course, I know that, but in Tunisia now the music has changed. There are just commercial songs. People miss the old style of songs.
So, El General has recorded a new song. He's allowing us to hear a preview of it. It sums up where he thinks the country and himself are at this moment.
In the song, I speak about how social media is such a negative influence on people and society. And in the second part, I talk about my family and kids and how I need to be very close to them, especially in their early years.
But are you now looking for someone else to be the leader, the musical leader, like you were in 2011?
ما عرفش خاطر جنرال هو جنرال.
El General will always be El General. But maybe there is someone who would be more revolutionary than me. Like in football, for example, we say Lionel Messi is the best of the best. Then maybe a few years later, there will be someone who's playing football even better than him.
So far, though, there's been little sign of another popular uprising taking shape. People's main concern seems to be trying to somehow find the money to feed their families. While Tunisia helped spawn the Arab Spring, is it now bookending the dream that had inspired so many across the Middle East? Its once celebrated parliament dissolved, opposition politicians, journalists and activists locked up, and scores of judges sacked. Little of all this is discussed in Europe. Stopping migrants reaching the continent is the main focus there, with the EU having just given Tunisia more than $100 million for that purpose alone. 900 million more, aimed at bolstering the country's dire economy, is also on the table, though that comes with big belt-tightening strings attached. Shema Issa was due to be released in June after 4 months in jail, but Tunisia's public prosecutor wasn't having that. He appealed against the decision and won. Then on Thursday the 13th of July, finally, there was much better news for Shema Issa and her sister Hadija. Shema Issa was released from Manuba Women's Prison to the delight and relief of her family and supporters. Assignment was presented by me, Mike Thompson. The producer was Bob Howard.
Match of the Day Africa Top 10 is the new podcast celebrating the best of African football.
It must be his best ever goal.
Wow, incredible.
Each week, Yaya Toure, Efa Nakoku and me, Gabriel Zakwani, try to decide who should be crowned number one in our best of African football list.
This is where it gets interesting.
What a player, what a player.
I think we know who number one is.
There'll be some familiar faces.
I play with both of them. Both are special.
And some tricky decisions.
Guys, stop being emotional. We're talking about being realistic.
I won't argue anymore.
And we might even make it onto a list or two ourselves.
I just needed one list. You've been in many lists already. We don't need you in this list again.
That's Match of the Day Africa Top 10 from the BBC World Service.
Woo, that's the one.
Find it wherever you get your BBC podcasts.